Following recent military strikes by the US and Israel on Iranian nuclear sites, Tehran's parliament has authorized a severe countermeasure. They have officially threatened a full naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. This is the Strait of Hormuz, between Iran and Oman. At its narrowest, this waterway is just 33 kilometers across. If closed, crude prices could surge past $100 a barrel, causing crippling inflation for energy-dependent Asian economies like India, China, and Japan. Which brings up a mathematical problem. Iran lacks a massive, top-tier conventional navy. So how does a country with limited naval capabilities hold the world's largest economic superpowers in a chokehold? The answer lies in the control of the map's narrowest vulnerabilities, physical choke points that provide more leverage than conventional military size. Let's look at the scale of the traffic here. Every single day, roughly 20 million barrels of crude oil and liquefied natural gas pass through this one corridor. That is a full 20% of global daily energy consumption, all squeezing into a tiny gap on the map. And the actual shipping lanes are much tighter than 33 kilometers. To transport that much volume, you need very large crude carriers, or VLCCs. Because these massive ships require deep water to avoid running aground, they are forced into navigable shipping lanes that are only 2 miles wide in each direction. This 2-mile constraint makes the trap work. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps doesn't need huge destroyers to control this lane. They use asymmetrical tactics, fast attack boats, anti-ship missiles, and sea mines placed at the edges of the shipping routes to harass and disrupt the supertankers. The logical counter-strategy for neighboring producers like Saudi Arabia and the UAE is to bypass the water entirely. They have built overland pipelines to pump their oil directly to the Red Sea or the Gulf of Oman. This chart compares the daily volume of Hormuz against those pipeline alternatives. You can see that even when operating at maximum capacity, bypasses like the East-West and Fujairah pipelines can only handle about 15% of the total volume that normally transits the strait. When physical geography dictates where deep-water ships must sail, even multi-billion-dollar alternative infrastructure cannot replace a natural maritime choke point. And Hormuz is not an isolated case. This vulnerability, the difficulty of moving massive cargo through a tiny physical space, is dictating superpower behavior worldwide. Take the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the critical gateway connecting the Arabian Sea to the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. Right now, forces in Yemen are actively disrupting global trade passing through that corridor, using basic missile and drone technology. When that route becomes too dangerous, international shipping companies abandon the Suez Canal entirely. They are forced to route vessels around the southern tip of Africa, adding weeks of travel time and massive fuel costs. To protect their economic interests at this specific bottleneck, China established its first ever overseas military base in Djibouti, positioning its forces directly adjacent to Bab el-Mandeb. Further east, the Strait of Malacca processes roughly 50% of all Chinese international trade. Beijing lives with a constant anxiety that a rival power could establish a blockade at Malacca and cut off their economy. Their solution was to construct the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, designed to bypass the strait, connecting western China directly to the Arabian Sea at Gwadar Port. The world's most aggressive military expansions and multi-billion-dollar infrastructure projects are built to secure or avoid these tiny geographic bottlenecks. While global supremacy is often measured by aircraft carriers and nuclear warheads, true influence lies in the control of physical trade routes. The utility of a choke point is the invisible power of deterrence. The mere threat of mining the water or closing a strait operates as a weapon of mass economic disruption, often without a single shot being fired. This chart of Iran's oil exports reveals an inherent paradox. Executing a closure of Hormuz would be economic suicide for Tehran. Their main geopolitical ally, China, currently purchases nearly 90% of those exports. Blocking the strait means blocking their own revenue. Yet the threat persists. Because 80% of global trade is bound to the sea, the nations bordering these waterways possess a persistent pressure point over the global economy. The world's economy is constantly in motion, which means it will never be truly secure. History, wealth, and power will always be written on the map, held hostage by its narrowest waters.